Hope Fitzgerald clutched her carpetbag tighter as the train whistled its final warning, belching steam across the tiny platform of Cottonwood Springs, Arizona Territory, 1878. The journey from Boston had been long, but the true test awaited meeting the man who had promised to be her husband through nothing more than a series of carefully penned letters and a contract. The platform cleared quickly as passengers dispersed, leaving Hope standing alone beneath the merciless western sun. She consulted the crumpled paper in her hand once more, confirming the details. Abraham Winters was supposed to meet her at noon. The station clock showed it was now past. Hope smoothed down her travel-worn blue dress, wondering if perhaps she looked too plain after the long journey. She had been careful with her appearance that morning, pinning her chestnut hair into a respectable arrangement despite the train's constant jostling. Now she felt foolish for caring so much about impressing a man who couldn't be bothered to arrive on time. "Excuse me," she approached the station master, a graying man with spectacles perched on his nose. "I'm looking for Abraham Winters. He was to meet me here at noon." The station master's expression shifted from polite interest to something resembling pity. "Abraham Winters? Madam, I'm afraid." Before he could finish, the door to the station swung open and a portly, balding man entered with two younger companions trailing behind him. "That's her," the man declared loudly, pointing toward Hope. "That's Winters' mail-order bride." Hope's cheeks burned as several onlookers turned to stare. The trio approached, assessing her with unconcealed interest. "Miss, I hate to be the bearer of bad news," the portly man said, not looking particularly remorseful, "but Abraham Winters won't be coming." "I don't understand," Hope stammered. "We had an agreement." One of the younger men snickered. "Agreement? That's rich." "Winters skipped town 3 days ago after losing his ranch in a poker game. Word is he's halfway to California by now." The blood drained from Hope's face. That can't be true." "It is," the station master confirmed quietly. "I'm sorry, miss." The portly man looked her up and down. "Though now that you're here, my ranch could use a woman's touch. Name's Peterson. I'd be willing to honor Winters' arrangement if you catch my meaning." His companions laughed, the sound cruel in Hope's ears. "That's mighty generous of you, Peterson," one said, "considering she ain't much to look at after that long trip." Hope felt the world spinning around her. Everything she'd planned, the future she'd imagined during those long train rides west, crumbled before her eyes. She had exactly $23 to her name, barely enough for a room for a few nights, let alone a return ticket to Boston. And what would be waiting for her there? A family who had made it clear she was a burden, who had practically pushed her to accept this arrangement. The laughter grew louder as more townsfolk gathered, drawn by the commotion. Her humiliation became a public spectacle. "I'd take her if I didn't already have a wife. Maybe the saloon's hiring." Hope fought back tears, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She gripped her carpetbag so tightly her knuckles turned white, wishing the ground would open and swallow her whole. Then, a commanding voice cut through the laughter. "That's enough." The crowd parted as a tall figure strode forward. Hope's gaze fell upon a man unlike any she'd seen in Boston. Dust clung to his worn leather chaps and denim shirt. A weathered cowboy hat shaded eyes that blazed with quiet intensity. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to hard work and open spaces. "She's waiting for me," he stated simply, his voice carrying across the now silent platform. The portly man Peterson stepped back, his mocking smile faltering. "Owen, what are you talking about? This is Winters' mail-order bride." The stranger Owen stepped beside Hope, his presence solid and reassuring. "Not anymore. The lady and I have an arrangement." Hope stared at him, bewildered. She had never seen this man before in her life, yet he looked at her with such conviction that for a moment she almost believed his claim herself. "Miss Fitzgerald," he asked, tipping his hat. "I apologize for the delay. My horse threw a shoe on the way into town." Hope hesitated, her mind racing. This man was offering her a lifeline, but to what end? She glanced around at the faces of the townsfolk, some amused, some curious, some downright predatory. "Yes," she found herself saying. "I was beginning to worry." Owen picked up her trunk with one hand and offered her his other arm. "Shall we? It's a fair ride to the ranch and we should get started before the afternoon heat." Peterson stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute, Irons. You can't just—" "I believe I can," Owen replied, his tone deceptively light but with steel underneath. "Unless you'd care to discuss it further." Something in his stance made Peterson reconsider. The portly man backed away, muttering under his breath. Hope allowed Owen to lead her away from the platform, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain he could hear it. They walked in silence to a hitching post where a handsome chestnut gelding waited patiently. Once they were out of earshot, Owen spoke quietly. "My name is Owen Irons. I have a small ranch about 5 miles outside of town. I'm offering you shelter and safety, nothing more. When you decide what you want to do next, I'll help you as I can." Hope studied his face, looking for deceit but finding only straightforward honesty in his sun-weathered features. "Why would you help a stranger?" Owen secured her trunk to his saddle before answering. "Because my mother came west as a mail-order bride. When her intended changed his mind, a stranger helped her. I'm just paying that forward." For the first time since arriving, Hope felt a small measure of relief. "I'm Hope Fitzgerald, and thank you." Owen nodded once, then helped her mount before swinging up behind her. As they rode away from town, Hope was acutely aware of his presence, solid and warm at her back, his arms reaching around her to hold the reins. She wondered what kind of man would extend such kindness to a complete stranger, and what awaited her at his ranch. The rhythmic sound of hoofbeats marked their progress as Cottonwood Springs grew smaller behind them, the train station and her original plans fading into the distance with each passing moment. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Owen guided his horse across the rugged terrain. Hope had never imagined Arizona territory would be so vast, so empty. In Boston, one could hardly walk a block without encountering another soul. Here, they'd ridden for nearly an hour and seen no one. "How much farther?" Hope ventured, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. "Just over that ridge," Owen replied, his voice close to her ear. "You'll see the chimney smoke first." As they crested the hill, Hope gasped softly. Below them spread a modest but well-tended ranch. A small house built of timber and stone stood proudly beside a barn and corral. A vegetable garden thrived alongside the house, and in the distance, cattle grazed peacefully. "It's not much," Owen said, misinterpreting her reaction, "but it's mine, free and clear." "It's beautiful," Hope answered honestly. After the cramped tenements of Boston, the open space and clear air seemed like paradise. As they approached the house, a bark announced their arrival. A black and white border collie raced toward them, followed by an older woman who emerged from the house wiping her hands on her apron. "You're back early," the woman called, then stopped short when she spotted Hope. "And you've brought company." Owen dismounted first, then reached up to help Hope down. His hands were strong and calloused against her waist, but gentle as he set her on her feet. "Mrs. Holloway, this is Miss Hope Fitzgerald. She'll be staying with us for a while." He turned to Hope. "Mrs. Holloway helps around the ranch, lives in the small cabin behind the house." The older woman's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline, but she quickly composed herself. Well then, miss, you must be parched after your journey. Come inside where it's cooler. Hope followed Mrs. Holloway into the house, grateful for the shade it provided. The interior was simple but comfortable, a main room with a stone fireplace, sturdy wooden furniture, and shelves lined with books. Through an open door, she glimpsed a kitchen where something savory simmered in a pot. "Owen, you take that trunk to the spare room," Mrs. Holloway directed. "Miss Fitzgerald, sit yourself down before you fall down. You look dead on your feet." Hope sank gratefully into a chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted she truly was. "Thank you for your kindness, Mrs. Holloway." The older woman bustled about, pouring cool water from a pitcher. "Don't thank me yet. You can start by telling me what in tarnation is going on." Owen Irons isn't one for bringing strange women home. Heat rose in Hope's cheeks. "It's not what you might think. Mr. Irons rescued me from a rather uncomfortable situation." She explained about Abraham Winters and the humiliation at the train station. Mrs. Holloway's expression softened as she listened. "That Winters was always a no-account scoundrel," she declared when Hope finished. "As for Owen, well, he's a good man, not one for many words, but his heart's in the right place." Owen returned, having deposited Hope's trunk in the spare room. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in hand. "I need to finish mending that fence in the north pasture," he said. "Mrs. Holloway will get you settled." Before Hope could thank him again, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. "Don't take it personal, Mrs. Holloway said, noting Hope's confused expression. "That boy's more comfortable with horses than people most days." "He mentioned his mother was a mail-order bride," Hope ventured. Mrs. Holloway nodded, her expression turning somber. "Sarah Irons, finest woman I ever knew. Came west to marry a man who died before she arrived. A rancher took her in, just as Owen's done for you. They eventually fell in love, married, and built this place together." "What happened to them?" "Fever took them both when Owen was 16. He's been running this place on his own since then, with a little help from me and a couple of ranch hands who come by during busier seasons." She patted Hope's hand. "Now, let's get you something to eat, and then you can rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to figure out what comes next." That night, lying in a strange bed in a strange house, Hope stared at the ceiling and contemplated her situation. She had come west seeking security, a chance at a new life away from the grinding poverty and limited prospects Boston offered a woman alone. Instead, she found herself dependent on the charity of a taciturn cowboy, who seemed to want nothing from her, which only made her wonder what would happen when his goodwill ran out. Dawn broke early on the ranch. Hope woke to the sounds of life outside: chickens clucking, a cow lowing, the distant nickering of horses. For a moment she was disoriented, then yesterday's events came rushing back. She dressed quickly in her second-best dress, the best still packed away, saved for a wedding that wouldn't happen, and made her way to the kitchen. To her surprise, Owen was already there, cooking breakfast over the stove. "Good morning," she said hesitantly. He turned, spatula in hand. "Morning. Hope you slept well." "I did, thank you." She hovered uncertainly in the doorway. "Can I help with anything?" Owen nodded toward a small table set with plates and cups. "Coffee's hot if you want to pour." They worked in surprisingly comfortable silence, Owen frying eggs and bacon while Hope poured coffee and sliced bread that Mrs. Holloway had apparently baked the previous day. "Where is Mrs. Holloway this morning?" Hope asked as they sat down to eat. "She only comes by 3 times a week," Owen explained between bites. "Lives with her son's family in town the rest of the time." Oh. Hope realized this meant they would be alone at the ranch. The propriety alarm that had been instilled in her since childhood began to sound. As if reading her thoughts, Owen added, I'll be working outside most of the day. You'll have the house to yourself." "Mr. Irons, Owen," he corrected. "Owen," she amended. "I appreciate your kindness, but I can't impose on you indefinitely. I need to find work, support myself." He considered this as he finished his coffee. Town's not the best place for a woman alone, especially one with your situation. My situation. A mail-order bride without a groom creates talk, and in places like Cottonwood Springs, talk can be dangerous. He stood, carrying his plate to the wash basin. "Stay here until you have a proper plan. No one will bother you." Hope wanted to protest further but realized the wisdom in his words. She had $23, no connections, and no immediate prospects. "At least let me earn my keep while I'm here." Owen seemed about to refuse, then reconsidered. "Can you cook?" "Yes, quite well actually." "Garden?" "I helped my mother tend our window boxes." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Not quite the same, but you can learn. Mrs. Holloway will show you." With that settled, Owen departed for his day's work, leaving Hope to explore her temporary home more thoroughly. She discovered a small bookshelf filled with well-worn volumes, mostly practical guides to ranching and farming, but also some poetry and a few novels. She traced her fingers along the spines, wondering which had belonged to Owen's mother. The day passed quickly as Hope busied herself with household tasks. She found cleaning supplies and set to work, determined to repay Owen's kindness in whatever small ways she could. By the time she heard him return late in the afternoon, she had scrubbed the floors, dusted every surface, and had a stew simmering for dinner. "Something smells good," Owen remarked as he entered, removing his hat and hanging it by the door. Hope felt an unexpected flutter at his approval. "I found a cookbook with a recipe for beef stew. I hope I did it justice. I'm sure it'll be better than my cooking." He washed up at the basin outside before joining her in the kitchen, his hair still damp and his face freshly scrubbed. Over dinner, Hope tried to learn more about her benefactor. "Have you always lived in Arizona territory?" Owen nodded. "Born right here in this house. And you never wanted to leave, see other places?" He seemed to consider the question seriously. "Went to Tucson once. Too many people, too much noise." He looked around the simple kitchen. "Everything I need is here." "What about companionship?" The question slipped out before Hope could reconsider its propriety. If Owen was offended, he didn't show it. "Got Mrs. Holloway the hands when they're here. Dog, horses." He paused. "Not much for socializing." Hope found herself smiling. "I've noticed." To her delight, Owen smiled back, a real smile that transformed his weathered face and crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Reckon you have." That night, Hope wrote in her journal by lamplight, trying to make sense of her situation. She had come west expecting to be a wife, to have clear duties and expectations. Instead, she found herself in a strange limbo, neither guest nor servant, staying with a man she barely knew but who had shown her nothing but kindness. Days turned into a week, and Hope settled into a routine at the ranch. Mrs. Holloway taught her the basics of gardening, showing her how to tend the vegetables that thrived in the harsh climate with proper care. Hope took over more of the cooking and household duties, finding satisfaction in the tangible results of her labor. Owen remained a quiet presence, leaving early each morning and returning tired each evening. But gradually, his reserve began to thaw. He started sharing small stories over dinner, how a particular calf had gotten stuck in a ravine, or the time his father had built the barn during a record-breaking heat wave. On Sunday, Owen surprised her by harnessing the wagon instead of saddling his horse. "Thought you might like to attend services in town," he explained, seeing her questioning look. "Mrs. Holloway mentioned you were raised Christian." Hope was touched by his consideration. "I would like that very much, thank you." The ride to town was pleasant, with Owen pointing out landmarks and sharing bits of local history. Hope found herself relaxing in his company, asking questions, and even teasing him gently about his obvious discomfort at the prospect of church social activities. Their arrival in Cottonwood Springs caused quite a stir. Heads turned as Owen helped Hope down from the wagon, his hand lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary at her waist. She was grateful for the new bonnet Mrs. Holloway had helped her fashion, which partially shielded her burning cheeks from curious onlookers. "That's her," she heard someone whisper. "Winter's mail-order bride. Living out at the Irons Ranch now," another voice added suggestively. Hope stiffened, but Owen's steady presence beside her gave her courage. He escorted her into the small church with his head held high, nodding politely to those they passed, but offering no explanations. The service itself was familiar and comforting, the hymns and prayers a connection to the life Hope had left behind. Afterward, several women approached her, curiosity barely disguised as welcome. "Miss Fitzgerald, isn't it?" A woman in a green dress with too many flounces extended her hand. "I'm Lucinda Peterson. My husband mentioned meeting you at the station." Hope forced a polite smile. "Yes, I remember. Such an unfortunate situation with Mr. Winters," Lucinda continued, her eyes gleaming. "Though it seems you landed on your feet, or should I say, in someone else's home." Before Hope could respond, another woman joined them. "Don't mind Lucinda, dear. She's just upset because Owen Irons has never shown the slightest interest in her niece." The woman smiled kindly. "I'm Martha Wilson, the schoolteacher. If you're planning to stay in Cottonwood Springs, we're always in need of assistance at the school." Hope brightened at this unexpected opportunity. "I would be very interested, Mrs. Wilson. I worked as a teaching assistant in Boston before coming west." "Wonderful. Stop by the schoolhouse tomorrow if you'd like to discuss it further." As they rode back to the ranch, Hope shared the news with Owen, her excitement bubbling over. "It would be perfect. I could earn my own way, find lodgings in town eventually." Owen's hands tightened on the reins. "Town's expensive, and teaching doesn't pay much." "It's a start," Hope insisted. "I can't impose on you forever." "It's not an imposition," he said quietly. Hope glanced at him, surprised by the emotion in his voice. "Even so, I need to make my own way. You've been more than generous, but—" "But you didn't come west to be a schoolteacher," Owen finished for her. "You came to be a wife." The blunt statement hung in the air between them. Hope looked away, watching the landscape roll past. "Plans change," she said finally. "Life changes them for us." That night, Owen sat longer than usual at the dinner table, seemingly lost in thought. Finally, he spoke. "My father didn't rescue my mother just out of kindness." Hope set down her teacup. "What do you mean?" He'd seen her in town before her fiancé died, admired her from afar. When she needed help, he saw his chance. Owen's eyes met hers across the table. He offered her a place to stay, expecting nothing, but hoping for everything. Hope's heart quickened. "And your mother?" Took her 3 months to realize she loved him too. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "She proposed to him, said she was tired of waiting for him to find his courage." Hope laughed softly, charmed by the story. "She sounds wonderful." She was. Owen stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "Good night, Hope." "Good night, Owen." As he left, Hope remained at the table, her mind swirling with new possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider before. The next morning, Hope rode into town with Owen, who had ranch business to attend to. They agreed to meet at the general store in 2 hours. Her meeting with Mrs. Wilson went splendidly, with Hope hired as an assistant teacher to start the following week. Buoyed by this success, Hope decided to browse the general store before meeting Owen. As she examined a bolt of calico fabric, considering a new work dress. A familiar voice made her stomach clench. Well, if it isn't Miss Fitzgerald. Peterson stood before her, his small eyes glinting. Two companions flanked him, the same men who had been at the station. Mr. Peterson, Hope acknowledged stiffly, looking past him for the store proprietor or any other potential allies. Heard you've been playing house with Irons, Peterson said, stepping closer. Didn't take you for that sort of woman. I don't know what you mean, Hope replied, backing away until she bumped into a display of canned goods. I think you do. Peterson reached out to touch her cheek. Irons isn't the only man in Cottonwood Springs who could use a woman's companionship. Hope slapped his hand away. Don't touch me. Peterson's face darkened. Thinks she's too good for us now, boys. Maybe we should remind her what happens to women with no protection in these parts. The bell above the store door jingled and Owen entered. He assessed the situation in an instant, his expression hardening as he strode toward them. Everything all right here? He asked, his voice deceptively calm. Peterson sneered. Just having a friendly chat with your house guest, Irons. Wondering when you'll be done with her so others might have a turn. The blow came so fast Hope barely saw it happen. One moment Peterson was smirking, the next he was sprawled across a barrel of flour, blood streaming from his nose. You broke my nose, Peterson howled, clutching his face. Owen stood over him, fist still clenched. Count yourself lucky that's all I broke. Peterson's companions helped him to his feet, all three backing toward the door. This isn't over, Irons, Peterson threatened. Nobody humiliates me in my own town. It's not your town, Owen replied evenly. And if you ever come near Miss Fitzgerald again, a broken nose will be the least of your worries. After Peterson and his friends departed, the store proprietor emerged from the back room, looking alarmed. Owen, I'm sorry. I was in the storeroom and didn't hear until— It's all right, Thomas, Owen assured him. Just wrap up our supplies. We need to head back. The ride home was tense, with Owen scanning the horizon frequently as if expecting pursuit. I'm sorry, Hope said as the ranch came into view. I never meant to cause trouble. Owen's jaw tightened. You didn't cause anything. Peterson's had it coming for years. Still, perhaps it would be better if I found lodging in town when I start teaching. Mrs. Wilson mentioned a boarding house for single women. No. Owen's tone left no room for argument. It's not safe, not with Peterson holding a grudge. Then what do you suggest? Hope asked, frustration edging into her voice. That I hide at your ranch forever. That's not fair to either of us. Owen reined in the wagon, turning to face her fully. What if it wasn't hiding? What if it was staying? Hope's heart skipped. Owen, what are you saying? I'm not good with words, he began haltingly. Not like in those letters you exchanged with Winters, but these past weeks having you at the ranch. It's been good. Better than good. Hope hardly dared breathe. For me too. I know it's not what you planned. I'm not what you planned. Owen removed his hat, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of rare vulnerability. But sometimes life brings us something better than our plans. Are you asking me to marry you, Owen Irons? Hope whispered. I'm asking if you might consider it, not now, when you're ready. His eyes, usually so guarded, were open and hopeful. We could build something good together, if you wanted to. Hope reached out, her hand covering his larger one. I came west looking for a husband, it's true, but I never expected to find a man I could care for, not like this. Owen's fingers tentatively entwined with hers. Is that a maybe? It's a let's see where this leads, Hope replied, smiling through sudden tears. But I'm hopeful. Owen's answering smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Hopeful, he repeated. Seems fitting. As they continued toward the ranch, Hope reflected on how drastically her life had changed in just a few weeks. She had arrived in Arizona territory expecting one future, and found another entirely. There would be challenges ahead: Peterson's threats, the town's gossip, their own tentative relationship, but for the first time since stepping off that train, Hope truly felt she might have found her place in this wild, beautiful land. 3 months later, Hope stood in Mrs. Holloway's cabin, allowing the older woman to make final adjustments to her wedding dress. The simple gown of ivory cotton with lace trim at the collar and cuffs was far from the elaborate silk creation she had once imagined, but Hope couldn't have been happier with it. "Hold still, child," Mrs. Holloway admonished, pins between her lips as she adjusted the hem. "I swear you're as fidgety as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs." "I can't help it," Hope laughed. "I never thought I'd be this nervous." Mrs. Holloway stood, surveying her handiwork with satisfaction. "Nothing to be nervous about. That boy's been in love with you since he brought you home. Anyone with eyes can see it." The wedding was small but joyful, held in the garden behind the ranch house. Martha Wilson attended, along with the circuit preacher, a few neighboring ranchers, and the hands who worked for Owen during busy seasons. Even the station master made an appearance, bringing news that Abraham Winters had been arrested in California for swindling another woman. "Good riddance," Owen had muttered when told, and Hope couldn't help but agree. If Winters hadn't abandoned her, she would never have found her way to this moment, to this man. As Owen recited his vows in a voice steady with conviction, Hope knew she had found something far more precious than the security she'd originally sought. She had found a partner, a friend, and a love that had grown naturally from respect and kindness. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." Owen lifted her veil with gentle hands, his eyes full of wonder as he gazed at her. "Mrs. Irons," he whispered before claiming her lips in a tender kiss that held the promise of all their tomorrows. The small crowd cheered as they turned to face them, now united as husband and wife. Hope caught Mrs. Holloway wiping away a tear, and Martha Wilson beaming with approval. Later, as the celebration continued with music and dancing in the yard, Owen led Hope away for a moment of privacy. "Happy?" he asked, his arm secure around her waist. Hope leaned her head against his shoulder, watching the sunset paint the Arizona sky in spectacular hues of orange and gold. "More than I ever thought possible." "I have something for you," Owen said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small wooden box and opened it to reveal a delicate gold ring with a single pearl. "It was my mother's. I've been saving it, hoping someday I'd have someone to give it to." Hope's eyes filled with tears as he slipped it onto her finger alongside her simple wedding band. "It's beautiful. She would have loved you," Owen said softly, "almost as much as I do." In that moment, standing in the fading light with the man she loved, Hope thought about the twists of fate that had brought her here. A broken promise, a moment of public humiliation, and a stranger's kindness had combined to give her the greatest gift of all, a love that had found her when she least expected it but needed it most. "Ready to go back?" Owen asked, nodding toward their guests. Hope smiled up at her husband, her heart full. "I'm ready for everything as long as it's with you." Hand in hand, they returned to their celebration, to the ranch that was now truly home to both of them, to the life they would build together in this wild and beautiful land that had once seemed so foreign, but now felt exactly where Hope was meant to be. 6 years later, Hope stood on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching as Owen taught their 5-year-old son Thomas to ride his first pony. Their 3-year-old daughter Sarah sat on her lap, clapping with excitement as her brother managed to stay mounted for a full circuit of the corral. "Mama, did you see? Did you see?" Thomas called out triumphantly. "I saw, sweetheart. You're doing wonderfully," Hope called back, her free hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly where their third child grew. The ranch had prospered under their joint care. Owen's cattle business had expanded, and Hope had continued teaching part-time at the school, bringing education to children from outlying ranches who couldn't attend regularly. They had built a reputation for fairness and generosity that extended throughout the territory. Peterson had eventually left Cottonwood Springs after his business failed, his departure largely unmourned by the townspeople who had grown weary of his bullying. The town itself had grown, with a new church, a proper school building, and even a small library that Hope had helped establish. As Owen lifted Thomas from the pony and set him on his shoulders, carrying him back toward the house with exaggerated stomping steps that made the boy shriek with laughter, Hope felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was the life she had never dared dream of, yet somehow found. "Hungry?" she asked as her husband and son reached the porch. Owen set Thomas down and leaned in to kiss Hope, his hand gently touching her growing belly. "Starving. What about you, Thomas? Did all that riding work up an appetite?" "Yes, sir," Thomas declared, racing into the house ahead of them. Sarah wiggled to be put down, toddling after her brother with determined steps. Left alone for a moment on the porch, Owen pulled Hope into his arms. "Have I told you today how much I love you, Mrs. Irons?" Hope smiled up at him, the years having only deepened her affection for this quiet, steadfast man who had rescued her in more ways than one. "You might have mentioned it, but I never tire of hearing it." "Good," Owen replied, his voice husky as he pressed his forehead to hers. "Because I plan on telling you every day for the rest of our lives." As they walked into their home hand in hand, Hope reflected on that fateful day at the train station. What had seemed like the end of her dreams had actually been just the beginning of a journey far more wonderful than anything she could have imagined. A journey that had brought her home, to Owen, to their children, to this life full of purpose and love. And it had all started with those simple, life-changing words. "She's waiting for me."